let's get into the time when me and Sean G got into some beef over $1,000. So, you know how I do, man, just follow the story. So one day, you know what I mean, me, Platinum and Flame, and Captain Keith, you know what I mean, was over in the Butler Projects. You know what I mean? This is right before they shut the Butler Projects down, right? Now, Captain Keith, you know what I mean, I knew through MHB, you know what I mean? Captain Keith is from Jersey, you know what I mean? Cool nigga, you know what I mean? And once in a while, you know what I mean, I would hit him up to buy guns and shit, you know what I mean? And plus, you know, Captain Keith could get anything, you know what I mean? This nigga sell anything but drugs, you know what I mean? You know, he like a jack of all trades, so we over in the Butler Projects, you know, me, Platinum and Flame, and Captain Keith. And he's showing us, you know, guns that, you know, that he got. He was showing us the latest guns, you know what I mean? He was showing us Mac 10s, Mac 11s, mini Uzis, you know what I mean? You know, shit like that, right? So me, Captain Keith, Platinum, Flame, you know, the four of us, you know, we testing these guns in the middle of the projects, you know what I mean? You know, around this time they had maybe two of the buildings abandoned, but it was people still living in the projects and shit. You know, plus, you know, we knew mad people in, you know, in the Butler Projects, cause, you know, Farrago, you know, had a lot of people that would either do security for him or, you know, that would do runs with him and shit, right? So we in the Butler Project, we testing these guns, so we shooting the guns at one of the, you know, the boarded up buildings, we shooting guns, you know, we just testing them shit. So the nigga, you know, Platinum, he's shooting the Tech 9, boom, 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 at the building. You know, Flame, you know, he's shooting the fucking Mac 11. You know, I'm testing the Mac 10. So that's when, Captain Keith was like, yo, he was like, those are good, but he was like, yo, I got some other shit, watch this. So he goes, you know, into his trunk. He pulls out this Uzi, you know, the mini Uzi, and he puts like a clip, a extended clip in the shit. He's like, watch this. Captain Keith let the shit all I mean, we was like, whoa, you know what I mean? And, you know, some of the niggas from the projects that was standing around was like, whoa, you know what I mean? He was like, what the fuck? And Captain Keith smiled, he was like, yeah, nigga. Then he handed me the, you know, the mini Uzi. You know what I mean? So that's when I let off some shots to them. I'm like, yeah, this shit's crazy. I'm like, how much you want for this? So that's when, you know, Captain Keith said, you know, how much you want for it? Now, mind you, I got the, you know, the Uzi in my hand. Motherfucking Platinum and Flame. You know what I mean? They got like Mac 10s and Tech 9s in their hand. And, you know, Captain Keith, you know, he reached in and, you know, he pulled out another Uzi. He got one in his hand, so all four of us got guns in our hands, standing in the middle of the Butler Projects. So as we talking, a cop car starts driving up real slow with the lights flashing. You know, the light, you know, the siren wasn't making no noise, but the lights was just flashing. You know, red and blue lights was just flashing, and the cop car drives up real slow. But, you know, we ain't run, we just stood there, you know, me, Platinum Flame, and Captain Keith, we just standing there. So the cops pull up. The two cops here, that was two black dudes, two cops, and, you know, blue uniform cops. They get out, and as they walk up, they seen we had guns in our hand, so they stop. So now we posted up, you know what I mean? There's four of us, you know, with guns in our hand. So the two cops, they looking. So once they seen what we had, they seen we had Mac 10s, Mac 11s, and Uzis and shit in our hand. The two black cops, they looked at each other. They looked at, you know, the four of us, you know, me, Platinum Flame, and Captain Keith. And no lie, the fucking two cops started walking fucking backwards. We started walking backwards, got back in the motherfucking patrol car, started driving real slow in reverse, and got the fuck up out of there, you know what I mean? And then that's when one of the locals in the Butler Projects was like, yo, another day in the projects, we all bust out laughing. So that's when I told, Captain Keith, yo, let's pack this shit up before these motherfuckers come back, with a squad, with a SWAT team or some shit. So we packing the shit up. My phone ring, It's Mink, Mink, shout out to Mink, shout out to Mink Mob. She's ringing my phone. I'm like, the fuck? So I got the Bluetooth in my ear, so I'm like, yo, Mink, what up? So Mink's like, yo, Tony, what's good? So, small talk here and there. So Mink Mom's like, yo, she was like, yo, do you know where I can get some burnout phones? I'm like, girl, what you want to do with some burnout phones? I would like hate you like, driving trucks and shit. Like, what you. She was like, nah, it's for, it's for Sean G or whatever. She was like, she didn't want to say too much, but, pretty much she's saying, Sean G just came home, he's trying to make a couple dollars, but, he ain't trying to go back into the streets, but, she's trying to get her hands on some burnout phone for, Sean G. So I'm like, well, shit, Captain Keith do everything, so I was like, well, let me ask my dude here, because at this time, I ain't know Captain Keith and Sean G knew each other. So while we packing up the guns, I'm like, yo, I said to Keith, I'm like, yo, where my homegirl can get some burnout phones. He was like, yeah. He was like, I can get to some burnout phones. He was like, what you need? He was like, and she was saying, she just need a couple burnout phones. So he like, yo, he said, the phones are $50 a piece. He said, give me a stack, give me $1,000. I give you 20 phones for $1,000. So I told Mink, well, the phones are $50 a piece. And he'll give you 20 phones for $1,000. So she said, alright, let me, text Sean G and I'll let you know. So I'm like, alright. So we pack up the guns. So I told him, yo, she gonna let me know. But, I told Keith, yo, I hit you back to let you know what she say. So he's like, alright. So boom, we get about the projects. We take off and get up out of there. So, probably about maybe 5 minutes later, Mink hits me back, was like, alright, cool. She'd take the 20 phones, for a stack. So I text Captain Keith. I'm like, yo, she with it, she'd take the 20 phones for a stack. So he was like, alright. He texted me back, he said, yo, tell her to send 500 a piece to these 2 cash apps. He said 2 cash apps, 2 different cash apps, one for his son and one for his other, I think his other son or his daughter, but it was 2 different cash apps. So that way she wouldn't have to send the money to one cash app, so that way shit won't get alerted or whatever. So I texted the 2 cash apps. She sent over the money. So he like, cool. So he said, give him like 2 days, 2-3 days, and he'll send the phones, through the mail. And then, so I'm basically networking it between me and Captain Keith. They never talked on the phone. I'm just, networking it, doing, and I only did it for me. Once, she said it was for Sean G, I kind of was hesitant, because, me and Sean G had no problems in the past, but I only did it for Mink, so I'm like, alright. So way bottom line, Mink, gives me an address to where she want the phone sent. Captain Keith, he sends the phones. Cool. Now I'd have forgot all about it, because, I'm doing my thing too. Cool. Meanwhile, Farrago, he's about to go out of town and shit, Farrago's going out of town. I think he was taking a trip, back home to New York, to visit family and shit. So, being that, Farrago kind of trusts me the most, he like, yo, he said that, he not gonna be in town to pick up his Maybach, he had a Maybach that was getting detailed and it was getting bulletproof. He was getting the Maybach bulletproof. A lot of the cars that Farrago rode in was bulletproof, but now he got the Maybach bulletproof, and he was like, yo, I need you to go pick up my car and, pick it up because I'm not going to be out. I'm not going to be here in town. He said, I already told him that, that I'm going to send you to pick up the car. Plus, I knew the guy that was bulletproofing, Farago's car. I already knew him. So, Farago's like, yo, just pick up my car. Park it up for me till I get back. Farago was going to New York. I then for like a week or 2 weeks or something like that, visit family. Cool. And in the midst of that, because Farago not only owned the nightclub, he had a cigar lounge, and then in the cigar lounge, it was his chick that worked there. She was a server. Bad bitch, looked just like motherfucking Jay Cargill. The wrestler looked just like Jay Cargill, just had a fatter ass and shit, right? Me and her was fucking around for a minute. I was fucking with her for like maybe 5 months and shit, Bad bitch, so, in the midst of all this, I kind of forgot about Mink and Sean G and, Captain Keith and the burnout phone, so I'm busy doing my own thing, So I get a call from Mink. Mink like, yo, we got the phones. Some of the phones worked, some of the phones didn't work. Plus, Sean G, he found a better deal, he wanna know if he can get the money back. He gonna, send some of the phones back. She was like, she'd bring some of the phones back. But, she wanna know if she can get the $1,000 back. So I'm like, what? I done forgot all about this. I'm like, damn. So I text Captain Keith, and Captain Keith at first he was like, nah, First he was like, nah, but, Mink was insistent on getting this $1,000 back. Because, Sean G wanted the $1,000 back. So, Captain Keith was like, well, do she got all the phones? So I hit her back. He said, do you have all the phones? He was like, we can get all the phones. Basically, he could, see if he can get the money back. Cool. So, Mink hits me back. It was like that. She got, most of the phones back, but maybe one. So, Captain Keith, he like, kind of like hesitant, but, I kind of talked him in, to her, kid, that was, Mink's my homegirl, so he was like, yo, he was like, come see me, at my spot, and, just bring the phones, and then, he'll get the money back or whatever. Cool, so I told Mink, I said, yo, just bring the phones, and I take you, over to my man house, and we'll get the money back, see if we can get the money back, whatever, Now this whole time I didn't know Captain Keith and Sean G knew each other. I didn't even know Mink knew Captain Keith. Remember, I'm the one negotiating all this. They got me in the middle of this dumb shit, right? So Mink, pulls up. I'm thinking she gonna bring Sean G with her. And Mink pulls up by herself. I'm like, where's Sean G at? And she was like, oh, nah, he laying low cause, he just came home. He don't know if the Fizz are still watching him and all this shit. I had, Platinum, with me. So I looked at Platinum. Platinum looked at me. So I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, alright. So I'm like, cool. So I told Mink, well, just park your car and I take you, to go, see my man or whatever. We go see if we can get this money back. So Mink's like, alright. So Mink parks her car. She gets in the passenger seat. I get in the driver's seat. Platinum gets in the, in the back seat. We drive up to Captain Keith's house, and now Captain Keith lived like mad far and shit, you know what I mean? They're like 40, maybe 60 minutes away, like we drove mad far. So we driving far the whole time. She got Sean G on the Bluetooth, She, talking every so often, she'd say something. I'm like, huh? She was like, nah, she'd point to her ear. I'm like, oh, So I guess she's talking to Sean G on the phone. So she's telling him, like, where we drive so we know. And I ain't thinking of it because, I'm gripped up, I'm strapped. Platinum strapped. So we pull up to Captain Keith's house. I say, yo, give me a minute, you know what I mean? So she, I get out. Platinum gets out, you know what I mean? So, everybody gets fresh to their legs. So Mink stays in the car. So, when I, text Captain Keith to open the door, Captain Keith comes out, you know what I mean? We shake hands, pound hug, you know what I mean? Because Captain Keith my nigga, you know what I mean? So when I turned around, the point to say, yo, my homegirl, Captain Keith like, oh shit, Captain Keith looked, and then Mink eyes got big. So, she's talking on the phone, but she's in the car. Me, Platinum, and Captain Keith, we outside the car. So Captain Keith like, oh, that's Mink. He was like, that's Sean G, chick. He was like, oh shit, so Mink's eyes is big. So he like, what up, Mink? That he shouted out, what up, Mink? Mink ain't say nothing. She on the phone. So I'm like, yo, she wants to see if she can get the $1,000 back, all this shit. So he like, so where the phone's at? So I go to the car. Mink looking nervous. Her eyes is big. I'm like, yo, you got the phones? She's like, huh? I'm like, you got the phones? She was like, yeah. So she hands me, the bags with the phones, and her hands are shaking. I'm kind of like, what the fuck? But Sean G's on the phone with her. You know what I mean? Because she know that they kind of had, beef online. I didn't know this. So Sean G's basically telling her not to get out the car, and that, we might try to set her up or leave her out there. So now she's scared. She don't want to get out the car now. You know what I mean? She wants the fucking $1,000, but she don't want to get out the car because Sean G, you know what I mean, it's on the fucking phone telling her not to get out the car. So she don't want to get out the car. It's so cool. I take the phones, I give it. You know what I mean? Now one of the phones is cracked. He's like, one of these phones is cracked. Like all the other phones is good, but one of the phones is cracked. So I'm like, yo, one of the phones is cracked. I'm like, yo, won't you get out the car? And she was like, nah, Sean G, she kind of told me that, how Sean G, and Cap Keith had beef, and, she said that they should go just stay in the car, and that, she ready to go. I'm like, I was like, so I'm like, what? I'm like, you serious? I was like, yo, ain't nobody gonna do that to you. I was like, I didn't even know y'all had beef, but yo, you good. She was like, I'm like, alright. So I'm like, yo, she wanna know she can get the $1,000 back for the phones. So Captain Keith was hesitant at first. After he was kind of like, man, fuck that bitch, fuck that, nigga, cadet. And I'm like, nah, that's my homegirl, Mink's always been good with me and shit, you know what I mean? So I'm like, yo, so he like, alright. And he said, let me have my wife, write off a check. So cool. So he goes in there. Then he has his wife write out a check for $1,000. So he gives me the check for $1,000. Shake hands, you know what I mean? I tell him to holler at him. So I bring the check, you know what I mean, to Mink. I give it to Mink. I'm like, yo, check for $1,000. So Platinum gets in the backseat. I get the driver. We start in the driver's seat. We start driving. So I'm driving. Platinum's in the back, Mink sitting on passenger. So now she got Sean G on speakerphone. And, he was saying, I was saying, yo, I told Mink, I said, yo, put him on speaker. I said, yo, I'm like, yo, why you telling Mink not to get out the car? Like, you know what I mean? Acting like we gonna do something to her. I was like, yo, she asked me for a favor for you. I'm doing y'all a favor, you know what I mean? Like, this shit, you know what I mean? I'm going out my way for y'all. Why would you tell her not to get out the car? And then he started explaining, how him and Captain Keith got beef and all this shit. I'm like, all that don't matter, my nigga. Like, I'm like, I'm doing you a favor. That'll let a lie. You know what I mean? All this shit. And then, he said some shit. And then he said something about, cause I'm pissed. I'm like, yo, I'm coming out my fucking way to do shit for y'all. You gonna tell him not to get out the car like I'm gonna do something now? Like, what the fuck I look like? You know what I'm saying? I was like, I ain't no grimy ass nigga, yo. I was like, I'm a straight up nigga. I'm a man of my fucking word. You know what I'm saying? So then, kinda got loud. I got loud. So he said something to the effect. He was like, it's funny. Shoji laughed and said, it's funny. Everybody against her. until the real gangster come outside. Now, that's when Mink is holding the phone on speaker, so I grabbed Mink's wrist to pull the phone closer to me. She's still holding the phone, but I got my hand on her wrist, and I said, what you say? And then he said, don't worry about it. He said, Mink, I'll holler at you, and he hung up. And then that's what she said, yeah, he hung up. I said, yeah, I know he hung up, because that nigga's a fucking coward. I said, yo, Mink, I was like, I got love for you, but I said, that nigga there don't scare me. I was like, I understand he got a little rep and all that and shit, and he might have these little country motherfuckers out here scared. But I was like, yo, that shit don't scare me. You know what I mean? Cool. So, at this point, Mink has checked, for $1,000, so I'm thinking, alright, it's over with, you know what I mean? She gave Captain Keith, the phone's back. He wrote her a check for $1,000. Everything should be good. So, we dropped Mink off back in her car, you know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? Me and Mink, we good. So she's like, thanks for getting the money back, you know what I mean? So, she goes on about her way. Me and Platinum, we going on our way. It's cool. So somewhere down the line, I guess Mink went to go try to cash the check at the bank. So Mink takes the check to the bank. The fucking check bounced. So now Sean G really furious, you know what I mean? So Sean G, Mink calls me, but Sean G's on the phone. So Sean G like, yo, player. I'm like, what's up? 'Cause first Mink called me, and she's like, yo, Sean G wanna talk to you. So I'm like, alright. So Sean G gets on the phone, he like, yo, player. He said, yeah, that check, you know what I mean, that your man Keith, wrote out. That shit bounced, you know what I mean? So, we still gonna need that money back. I said, yo, first of all, you know what I mean? That ain't got nothing to do with me that the check bounced. And I said, secondly, I did your girl a favor. She asked me for a favor. I looked out for her. I was like, yo, I don't owe you shit, my nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, I took her all the way down there to go speak to Keith. You told her not to get out the fucking car. I said you wouldn't even, come out to come, speak to me or Keith, man to man. I was like, yo, all this shit could have been avoided if you came out from the beginning. You know what I mean? I was like, yo, I don't really owe you shit. I was like, I looked out for y'all. You know what I mean? Y'all got the motherfucking phones. Then y'all said y'all didn't want the phones because y'all can get a better deal and all this shit. I went out my way to get the money back, and now you back on my phone with this bullshit. I'm like, my nigga. I was like, yo. I said, look, man. Listen, you know who Captain Keith is. Keith said to holler at him, man. You know what I mean? Man to man. He said the beef between y'all wasn't even that serious. I was like, you need to holler at that man. You know what I'm saying? I was like, 'cause this shit, I was like, I got too much going on to be fucking with this shit. So that's when he said, okay. So that's when Sean Z said, yeah. He said, I ain't been out in a while. He was like, I see niggas think that I still don't fit these black gloves or some shit he said. I said, I'm gonna have to put my gloves back on. I said, my man. I said, Sean G, check this out. I said, let me tell you something, man. I was like, where I'm from, boogeymen don't exist, my G. You know what I mean? I said, yo, I was like, yeah, I might be a light-skinned nigga, pretty boy and all that, but I said, yo, my nigga, I've been off the porch a long time, my nigga. I've been swimming with the sharks and the alligators and running through the jungles with the lions for a lot of years, my nigga. I like, trust me, nigga. Nigga like you don't fucking scare me, my G. So that's when Shorty just laughed. He was like, I hear you. He was like, I see you around, and hung up the phone. Alright, cool, fuck it, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You got guns, we got guns, however you want to do it. But I feel I don't owe a nigga shit. Cool, so go on, we just doing our thing, you know what I mean? I ain't speak to me after that, you know what I mean? She didn't call me. And, I guess, Sean G was mad that the check bounced, you know what I mean? But, it is what it is. So, one day, Captain Keith, now I didn't even know that Captain Keith worked at 7-Eleven. I knew that, he sold guns and, could, sell, like burner phones and, he did his dirt in the street, but he always kept it on the low and shit, right? Cool. So, Captain Keith, I guess is working at 7-Eleven to kind of keep, like, his lows clean to give the appearance of like he's a law-abiding citizen. Like, he has a regular job. They don't know that he does his dirt out in the street, you know what I'm saying? So, one day, while Captain Keith is at work at 7-Eleven, he's working, 7-Eleven doing his thing, stocking the shelves and shit. But, one thing I give Captain Keith, he's always strapped, he had his shit on him. So, a nigga runs into 7-Eleven, and tries to, run up on, Captain Keith. He runs up on Captain Keith. Captain Keith and the guy start tussling. The guy pulls out a gun. So Captain Keith, is tussling with the guy. They tussling. Somehow, Captain Keith was able to get to his shit. He lets off, bow, shooting at the nigga, bow, the nigga shoots back, boom, boom. Captain Keith hits the nigga, ta, then, shot the nigga up, boom. So Captain Keith shot the nigga, call the police come, and arrest the guy and shit. So Captain Keith, the shit was on the news and all that, cause, that's when Flame hit me up, was like, yo, tell me why the 7-Eleven, got robbed or whatever, and Captain Keith, was on the news or some shit. I'm like, what? So that's when, somewhere down the line, Captain Keith calls me, he was like, yo, I think your man Sean G tried to put a hit out on me. I'm like, what you mean? He was like, yeah, some nigga just ran up in the motherfucking 7-Eleven and tried to rob me, I'm like, what? He was like, yeah, the nigga came up with the burnout. He said he tussled with the nigga. He shot the nigga up, bye. He said he shot the nigga, Captain Keith all hype telling the story. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. So I'm like, so this nigga putting hits out on niggas. He was like, I think so. He said, I can't prove it. But he said, I think Sean G just sent this nigga in here to try to kill me and, rob me and shit. So I'm like, alright. So he was like, yo, just stay on point out there. So I'm like, for sure. So I'm on point, I'm always strapped, But, Sean G ain't been seen since he been out of jail. He ain't been seen. I only know that he's out because I talked to Mink, but I haven't spoke to Mink, since, me and him got to that argument, and all of a sudden, when I do text or call her, she don't pick up the phone no more. It just rings out or goes straight to voicemail. Cool. But I'm still living my life, I'm not gonna stay, cooped up in the house, for no motherfucker, So, no one's seen Sean G, he's been out of sight, out of mind. Now, the shit with Captain Keith happened about maybe like 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, cause now, it's been 2 weeks since the Captain Keith shit happened, the shootout at the 7-Eleven. I'm still cautious, but I'm still living my life. Now, mind you, Farrago already told me that I had to, pick up his, his car, he was getting the Maybach bulletproof. So, around this time, me and the chick that worked at his cigar lounge, the chick that looked just like Jay Cargill, this chick named Kiki or whatever. Nah, man, she was from Dallas and shit. She looked just like Jay Cargill and shit, She just had a fatter ass and shit, but got the same, hot cheekbones, thick lips shit, right? So me and her, fucking around and shit, so sometimes I would use her to do drop-offs and shit in case I felt like somebody was watching me and shit. So on this particular day, I got Farrago's, Maybach, because on this particular day, I had to do a drop-off to my homegirl, Sabrina. Sabrina owned a hair salon out in Dallas and shit, So I had to do, a delivery, so me and, the girl Kiki, we worked out at the gym earlier that day. Got to work out in together and shit. I had Farrago's, Maybach, cause I picked it up for him, brand new Maybach, bulletproof, the whole car's bulletproof and shit. But I had to do this drop off to Sabrina, cause Sabrina wanted to cop some pink cocaine because during the day Sabrina She runs a hair salon and shit, but at night when she closes the gates to her hair salon, she opens up the back door and she lets all the light, she lets the strippers and the hoes and the dope boys come in there and she basically wanted a whorehouse, and a lot of the strippers and hoes and, the clientele, they like to party on that pink cocaine, ever since Diddy got caught with pink cocaine. Motherfuckers been going crazy for this pink cocaine and shit, so, I had Kiki, I gave, I put some, I put like, I put like a bag, what I mean, like a Ziploc bag, a couple bundles of, pink cocaine in the duffel bag with Kiki, and I put her in the Uber, so that way, when the Uber pulls up, all he sees is a girl, with sneakers, spandex, sports bra, getting in the car with a duffel bag, nobody won't respect nothing. So, she gets in the motherfucker, in the Uber, or the Lyft or whatever. She gets in the backseat of that, I'm in the Maybach. I followed her, the motherfucking Lyft driver. So, as she, is riding in the Lyft, I'm texting her, and I'm like, yo, I'm a park in the McDonald's parking lot across the street from, the hair salon. So she's like, alright, cool. So, as the Lyft driver pulls up in front of Sabrina's hair salon, Kiki gets out the back seat of the car with the duffel bag. She gets out the Lyft and she goes into the hair salon. I pull into the McDonald's across the street in the parking lot. So cool. So Kiki goes in there, makes the delivery for me, gives the pink cocaine to Sabrina. So they could party later, do their little underground party later, so cool. So Kiki comes across the street, to the parking lot of McDonald's. I'm parked up in the Maybach, She gets in the passenger seat, boom, she hands me the money. So, as I'm sitting in the parking lot of the McDonald's, so we talking, cause me and Kiki got plans later, to go out and shit, So she's sitting in the passenger seat, talking to me. She's talking to me, right? So, the whole time, she's in the passenger seat talking. I'm in the driver's seat, I'm counting the money, We sitting in the parking lot. A car pulls up, you hear the tires screech. Nigga hops out. He runs up to the driver's side where I'm at. And, could I see the nigga running up through the side mirror? The nigga runs up. He pulls out the gun. He starts shooting. The first shot, he hit the window of the driver's side. Boom. The glass shatters. He starts firing shots. That's where Kiki starts screaming. She grabs her head and ducks down. So she ducking down, screaming in the passenger seat. The nigga just dumping. Doom, 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 doom. He's dumping. But the car is bulletproof. This is fucking Ferrago's car, the Maybach. The shit is bulletproof. He dumping. Doom, 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 doom. But I'm trying to get a good look at the nigga. But, the first shot shattered the driver side, glass is shattered, so I can't really see. So he's dumping, but I'm calm because I know the car is bulletproof, and plus, whenever, I get in the car or whoever with me get in the car, I lock the doors, so I ain't worried about them trying to open the door. But the nigga firing, he dumping, doom, 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 he dumping shots. But the car is bulletproof, so I'm staying calm, and Kiki just ducking down, screaming, talking about drop, but I'm calm. So, as the niggas just firing shots, I'm trying to look, I'm trying to look, but he shattered the first glass, so, as soon as I reach for my gun to see who it is, the nigga runs to the car, and then I see it's a nigga it's a YN, it's a young nigga with a ski mask on. He runs back and gets in the motherfucking car and drives off. So I'm like, fuck, the nigga drive off. I got my gun in my hand. I'm like, shit. So that's when I hit the car and reverse, and I start driving. Kiki's still screaming. I'm like, yo, so as I drive and get up out of there. I told her, I'm like, yo, it's over. Stop screaming. You're giving me a headache. So that's when she gets up and she starts feeling all her, feeling on her face, her head and her body, making sure she ain't got no holes in it. And she's like, yo, what the fuck? I'm like, yo, you do know the car's bulletproof, right? And then that's when, I started laughing, chuckling a little bit. And then that's when she looking at me like I'm crazy. And then, that's when she, kind of chuckled. And, I'm driving with my left hand, I got my gun in my right. And I'm like, fuck, you know what I mean? You know, 'cause I couldn't, get to the nigga, you know what I mean? The nigga got away, so I'm like, shit. So, I hit, I go to, I put the gun down, I put the gun on my lap. I hit up Captain Keith on speaker. I'm like, yo. He like, yo, I'm like, yo, some nigga just ran up on me and shot at me, you know what I mean? Shot at the motherfucking car shit. I told him how, I went to pick up Ferraro's car and the car was bulletproof. Nigga was dumping. I was like, thank God I was in this motherfucking Maybach. I was like, yo, this nigga Sean G pulling strings from behind the scene. I was like, yo, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker. So Captain Keith was like, I told you. He was like, I'm telling you, it's that motherfucking nigga, yo. That nigga's a bitch. That nigga's a bitch. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna hit you back. So I hit a platinum flame, told him what's happening, what happened and shit. They, so they bugging. I'm like, yeah, this nigga. I was like, green light on this nigga. I was like, green light on this nigga. I got money on this nigga. I was like, anybody that could find Sean G, I got 20 stacks on him. You know what I mean? So I just hung up the phone. And me and Kiki went back to the condo and shit, you know what I mean, and laid low. You know what I mean? Course fucked and all that shit. But we laid low, you know what I mean? Cool. So now we on the hunt for Sean G, but Sean G ain't been on the streets, you know what I mean? And every time I call Mink, even from different phones, she ain't picking up the phone. She ain't answering no texts, none of that shit. I'm like, alright, cool, you know what I mean? So I'm like, alright, so now it's been probably like a month or two, you know what I mean? Since, all this happened, you know what I mean? So me, Platinum, and Flame, we out and about, you know what I mean? We at, one of Sabrina's parties, you know what I mean? 'Cause Sabrina not only throws underground parties at her hair salon, sometimes she might, rent out a spot or whatever. Cool, so we in the, the underground party. We chillin', doing our thing. Fucking, now, everybody's get searched at the door. But me, Platinum, and Flame, we in there with our shit because, we know Sabrina. We in there with our shit, but everybody else is getting searched. Nigga Sean G comes to the underground party. So, of course, I stepped to him, you know what I mean? And, he was like, let's have a conversation man to man, so, step away, you know what I mean? So I said, yo, man, I don't appreciate you sitting niggas trying to kill me, whatever. He said, whoa, player. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. He was like, I don't know what problems you got out here. But if anybody's shooting at you or your man and Keith, he's like, I ain't got nothing to do with that, 'cause he said he getting word that, that he's hearing that he's sending hits out on, Keith and me. He was like, he ain't got nothing to do with that. But I could tell by the way he's talking, he's full of shit. So, but he said, but he still don't appreciate how niggas tried to joke him out of $1,000. I said, first of all, I said, your girl came to me, asking me for a favor. I looked out for y'all. I was like, oh, whatever problems you and Keith had before, that ain't got nothing to do with me. So we kind of going back and forth. And, he's kind of getting loud, so now I'm getting loud. I'm like, yo, so he's still going on about this $1,000. I'm like, yo, I don't owe you fucking shit, my nigga. I was like, I looked out for you, you know what I mean? Now he got his man and Trigger Man standing there. It's some other nigga. And I'm like, yo, I don't owe you shit, my nigga. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I looked out for you. I took Nick to go get the $1,000. She wouldn't even get out the fucking car because you told her not to get out the car. You know what I mean? And then you low-key threatening niggas. I said, my man, I don't owe you shit, my nigga. I was like, I looked out for y'all. That's it, man. Fuck that. I was like, fuck that. I was like, all this stress for $1,000. I was like, nigga, I'm getting money. So that's when I pulled out, knots out of both pockets. I was like, I'm getting money. And they already see I had watches and jewelry on. And I put the money, but I was like, I'm getting money. I'm good, nigga. You know what I'm saying? So he laughed. He's like, yeah. He was like, it ain't about the money, but it's the principle, all that, talking in that country slang and shit. So I'm like, nigga, whatever. So, he's talking shit, and I'm talking shit. So I'm like, so what you want to do? So that's when I pulled my gun out. I'm like, so what you want to do, nigga? And he's like, oh, he's like, all right, cowboy. He's like, all right. And he was like, nah, you got it. So I was like, yeah, I know I fucking got it, and fuck you talking about. So that's when Platinum and Flame come over. You know what I mean? So I'm like, shit, I was like, nigga, I'll put your fucking shit on the motherfucking floor right here, and they don't play with me. So, so that's where Sean G like, alright. So Sean G, Trigger Man, and his other man, they leave. So that's when, Flame was like, He's like, that shit ain't gonna go down just like that, right? I was like, it's like, I don't give a fuck, you know what I mean? So we stayed in, like, the party for like another maybe 35 minutes. So we already know these niggas probably gonna be waiting outside, so I got my shit out. So, you know what I mean? So I'm walking with my shit out, you know what I mean? Platinum Flame walking with me. So now, as we get outside, about to walk to the car, the nigga that was with Sean G went up. He fires a shot. Boom. You know what I mean? Now, I ain't even duck when he fired the first shot because I was so offended. You know what I mean? He fired the shot. Everybody started screaming and ducking. I'm like, what? So he fired a shot. The trigger man comes. And then that's when Flame pulls out his shit. Flame pulls out his shit, dumps. Boom, 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 boom. Starts dumping. You know what I mean? Platinum starts dumping. Doom, doom, doom. I'm standing right there. I ain't ducking. I ain't running or nothing. I'm like, fuck that. I'm like, well, I was like, what you country niggas want to do? I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, you niggas is pussy out here. I was like, I'm sick of you cunty ass niggas, right? You country bumpkin motherfucker. What the fuck you want to do? So they firing shots. Sugar Man firing. Platinum, he's firing. The other niggas firing. Flame is firing. I'm just standing there yelling. I'm like, what the fuck, on some Tony Montana shit, screaming like, nigga, what's up, you know what I mean? So it wasn't until I seen Sean G come around with, with black gloves on and a gun. And when he aimed, that's when I ducked. He fired 2 shots. Pow, pow. He fired 2 shots. I ducked behind the car. That's when I lit off 3. Boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? So now, it's like 3 of us shooting at each other. We, shooting, doom, doom, doom. We shooting, fire it, fire it, fire it, fire it. It's like, it's crazy out there, you know what I mean? Motherfuckers just ducking and shit. And firing shots. So I lit off 5 more. I lit off 5 more. So I'm like, shit. So, I pushed the button, you know what I mean? But, for my car to open the trunk. You know what I mean? Because I had maybe like a 9mm or 4.5 and shit. So so they still firing at me and shit. So I get to the truck, to get the mini Uzi I bought from Captain Keith. So I slap the clip in the mini Uzi. I come around. I lit that shit off. And man, that's when them niggas took off running. That's when, the nigga, Sean G took off running, triggered all of, cause now I got this Uzi, I'm letting that shit off. Letting that shit off. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm thinking I'm in the clear. So when I run to get in the car, I heard another shot, pow. So I'm like, fuck, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I gets in the car. I went to sit down. I'm like, shit, I went to sit down. Instant pain. So, boom, Platinum Flame. They get in the car, take off, we get the fuck out of there, because we know we can hear the sirens coming. We disappear. Boom. So the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm driving, I'm like, shit, I'm in pain and shit, you know what I mean? So, when we finally get to a safe location, you know what I mean? I stop the car. Platinum Flame get out. I get out as soon as I step my left leg to try to stand up. Pain. I'm like, what the fuck? So it took me a minute to get out the car, so I'm limping. I'm like, yo, man. I was like, I think I got shot in the leg. But we looking, we don't see, so that's when I, unzip my pants and drop my pants. They're like, whoa, I'm like, nah, chill, man. I'm like, nah, no diddy, no diddy. But I'm like, yo, I don't see what, so I'm looking at my legs, but, that's when they say, yo, there's like no diddy, you got shot in your ass. And I'm like, what the so I caught a shot in the ass and shit, so I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, shit. He was like, Dazzy. He was like, I guess you like Big Meech now. You know what I mean? That's when Platinum and Flame and them laughing. I'm like, y'all, this shit ain't funny. This shit burning. So I caught a shot to the ass and shit. So I'm like, fuck, we gotta get to the hospital. But Flame like, nah, we can't go to the hospital right now. If we go to the hospital, they gonna try to link you to the shooting. I was like, he said, we're gonna have to wait a few hours so that way, you know what I mean? I'm like, you fucking see. He was like, yo, that's our only chance, man. And the shit was burning. I'm like, what the fuck? So that's when Flame said, yo, he said, I don't fuck with homeboy. But he said, Duke is out in the country. He said, if there's a way you can get in contact with Duke and have it seem like you was hunting and there was a hunting accident, then maybe, you know what I mean, you could slide that way. So we had to let a few hours go by, so I'm in pain with this motherfucking bullet, you know what I mean? So, we hit up Duke and shit, you know what I mean? You know, Duke, I told you, explain, to Duke the situation. So, we wait for a few hours, sun done came up by now and shit. So now, Duke, he bought a change of clothes for me, Duke wears army fatigues and shit when he's out in the country with his uncle. So he, gave me, bought me the army fatigue jacket, shirt, pants, hat, some boots. So now, Duke and his uncle, they walked me into the hospital and shit. So they like, yo, what happened, they told me, told him that even though it was a hunting accident that, the gun went off by mistake, all this shit, that'll let a lie, his uncle was explaining the situation, because I done, pieced the uncle off, with like 3 stacks, so the uncle was real happy, So the uncle in there lying his ass off and shit, and then, that's, so as I'm, talking to the doctor said, yo, he was like, you got shot in your buttocks area. But he said a couple more inches, and he said we probably would have, have been having a different, conversation, So, that's when they, fixed me up and shit. I got up out the hospital, and, and that's how that situation ended, and from then on, Sean G disappeared. I ain't see him since, There's rumors that, he's in Atlanta, laying low with me. Some say he's still in Texas, I don't know, but I know after that he laid low, because, I definitely put a couple dollars on his head after that. And, that's basically how that beef ended, over the $1,000,